We have Brad, the CFO of Copperstate Farms. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thanks. Great to be here. Appreciate the time very much.
Yeah, so Brad, for the people that don't know you or your business, let's talk about and get a 30,000 foot look at Copperstate Farms, kind of yourself as well, and then we'll peel back and dig in deeper as we go forward with the conversation today.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, Copper State Farms is a single state operator focused on Arizona and was formed, I believe, in 2015 with the purchase of a 1.7 million square foot greenhouse in Snowflake, Arizona. Um, and there's a really fascinating backstory, actually. I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but there was a gentleman in Canada that won the lottery and wanted to build a greenhouse and commission a study to find the best place in North America
Mm,
to build the greenhouse. And it turns out that that location was Snowflake, Arizona, which is about 3 hours from Phoenix. And the reason being the amount of sunshine it gets. I think it's about 330 days of sunshine and access to high quality water. And so he built the greenhouse. It existed growing tomatoes and cucumbers up until about 2012, 13, and went bankrupt.
mm.
And the founder of the company, or two founders, were able to buy the property for cheap and retrofit it for cannabis. And so we have 1.7 million square feet of greenhouse. We believe it's the largest greenhouse in the country. It's a pretty phenomenal operation. And we have, or up until 2 days ago, we had two retail dispensaries, and as of yesterday, we got two more. We are a seed to sale, fully vertically integrated single state operator in the state of Arizona.
That's awesome. That's great. We're gonna dig into all those little things. I kind of looked at some of the
Yep.
news about the business here, so I'm really excited to dive into that. But one of the things that jumps out to me, Snowflake, Arizona. Probably no one's ever heard of it. It's 5,500 people. I read up in the city. It's about 15 to 20 miles south of Holbrook. Huge facility. Probably like 300 or 400 people must work at this building here, or in
Yep.
this business here. So tell me about finding remote talent in an area like Snowflake. Is it hard to find talent? Do you need to offer any specific benefits? Being the CFO, you may see, hey, we have to create some really nice incentive packages here for these people that come work in our farm. Is it hard to find talent in a place that is I'll say remote, but I guess remote as Snowflake, or as unknown as Snowflake?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a law of small numbers, right? We have a smaller pool. There are some surrounding cities that have obviously access to talent. Um, I think the number is probably 350 to 400 people.
Hmm.
We're approaching 500 people company wide. Um, and that is the biggest challenge, mostly because we're growing quite rapidly.
Yeah.
And so finding 50 to 100 people at a time is challenging in a big city. So when you go to a smaller city, obviously the challenge is a little bit bigger. Um, Yeah, I think the benefit of being in the cannabis industry is that the people that are in the industry and want to be in the industry are pretty passionate about it. They're whether they're users or uh, what's the word I'm looking for? You know,
Or
uh,
enthusiasts, or kind of super.
Enthusiasts. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Correct. That's exactly the word. So we have a passionate group of people, and finding the people and keeping them happy is just by being in the cannabis industry and some of the perks that you get from that. I
Gotcha.
think our biggest challenge is the amount of growth that we've had in a short period of time is nothing short of remarkable, and just keeping up to meet with demand is our biggest challenge right now.
That makes sense. Yeah, things are exploding everywhere across the country, and you're
Yep.
looking at Arizona here, November 3rd, likely going to pass, I think, on recreational here. And I saw that they're going to have a cap of 10% of the number of pharmacies in the state will then be allowed to
Correct.
have that many number of dispensaries. So there's strategic steps when you look at how people or states go from medical to recreational. I was just going
Mhm.
to ask, what are some of the strategic steps you guys are doing? Looks like you've bought two more dispensaries. Is that kind of to prepare to kind of get these grandfathered, potential recreational licenses? What's the thought behind that, aside from, hey, we're growing, we need to have more distribution? Is there any strategic thoughts about behind this recreational push?
In the way you asked it, I mean, it's a limited license state. And so we think obviously there's inherent value in the license
Yeah.
versus some other states like Oregon or Washington, where um, as long as you have some money, you can effectively stand up an operation.
Hmm.
Um, and from a strategic perspective, what's happened for Copperstate is it took, given the size of the facility, it took a long time to be able to figure out how to grow cannabis at scale,
Yeah.
and then be able to have, all the the other products like vape products and infused products and concentrates. It took a long time. There were many challenges with quality problems, and about 18 months ago that started to change. And what we realized is we are a low-cost producer in a major way. And so the strategic decision was made to be able to capture the margin from a financial perspective, all the way from the seed to the sale.
Hmm.
And so having a bigger retail presence was essential.
Hmm.
Um, and we believe, we're pretty certain that we're the largest wholesaler in the marketplace right now. And we want to have a balance between wholesale and retail.
Gotcha.
Um, just it's more as a natural hedge. Wholesale market can be
Yeah.
quite volatile, and so being able to absorb some of the capacity that we have, and diversify away from the wholesale business. But I think our target mix is always going to be about 50-50.
Yeah.
And obviously in certain months it may or quarters it may go above or below, but for us the ability to capture that full margin profile, especially being the low cost provider, um, is essential from a strategic perspective. The fact that it just happens to be right before Proposition 207 gets voted on is more coincidence than anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, we see a lot of these, we talked to Vireo Health and they're sitting on their New York dispensaries and other dispensaries in medical
Yep.
states. Cause hey, once it turns on recreational, it's going to be, a very captured market. Like I said, limited licensing that preserves the value of the license there. So
Sure.
that's,
I mean, for us, we don't look at the inherent value of the license necessarily. In a doom and gloom scenario, that's where it starts to
yeah.
become. But for us, is it's that low cost positioning. I can't stress that enough. And the ability to drive significant margin at retail.
Gotcha.
Our retail margins are very high.
Yeah.
Um, and so the ability to capture that because of our capacity that we have in the low cost positioning, makes acquiring more retail licenses very beneficial. And we look at it, on 1 to 3 years out.
Hmm. That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, which is a
Gotcha.
different position than some other people can look at it if they don't have the production capabilities or capacity, and they don't have that low cost position. They're looking at license value, whereas we're looking at more on a projected EBITDA basis and what
Hmm.
multiple do we think is reasonable for us to go in and acquire these businesses or licenses.
It's more financially driven instead of hope driven and like, hey, betting on the
Oh, it's
future. It's like, hey,
100% financially driven. I mean, we have real estate folks looking at traffic. We have our retail team looking in and saying, when we bring in our Soulflower is our retail brand.
mhm,
What do we think we're capable of driving? We have our production team seeing how much capacity to make sure that we can fully,
yeah,
get product into the store. And so we put all these different metrics together, and then are able to make a financial decision, irrespective of the licenses. What do we think the ultimate EBITDA that we can generate, and what do we think is a fair multiple to pay for it?
that's good. It's doing a sobering look at the cannabis industry, being more financially driven, being more thoughtful about your approach instead of just like, hey, it's cannabis, it's going to work no matter what. Like someone's selling for a reason. Someone's selling this business because maybe it's not working, but I'm assuming you guys have enough of a war chest to, hey, we've got cash flow coming in. We're able to also dip into any kind of funding to make this work for the long term. It sounds like this is not just a flash in the pan kind of business. This is a very thoughtful approach to building multi-generational businesses here.
Oh, that's exactly it. I think it talks to our investors as well. We have very sophisticated investor group. Our board is extremely strong, and being focused on one market um, allows us to fully optimize the business,
Mhm.
from the labor to the margins to the pricing. Yeah, no. I'll go back. Like I said, we have a very strong group of investors, very thoughtful. They're actively involved. Our board as well, and we analyze everything. Our balance sheet is our best friend. We don't want it to be our
Hmm.
worst enemy.
Yeah.
Um, and everything we do is thoughtfully analyzed. We can have healthy debates on whether we should do things or not,
Hmm.
but we try to get the full picture. And um, from an operations and financial perspective and team perspective. Uh, but the key is, once again, that low cost production, low cost up production, and our balance sheet. We have no debt. We're generating
Nice.
significant amounts of cash,
Hmm.
and so that puts us in a position um, to be really thoughtful. Our goal is to be the biggest player in Arizona.
That's good.
There's no question, to serve our customers.
Hmm.
Um, right, there's obviously a mission statement and vision that we strongly believe in. Internally, from a culture perspective, we want to be the best place to work in Arizona. Um, and obviously to our customers, we want them, from our medical patients, our patients to be happy with the product that they're getting and the customer service that they're getting.
Hmm.
So it all gets tied
Yeah.
together to some complicated decisions, but we want to be fiscally responsible, meet our shareholders' needs, and we want this business to exist for generations. There's no question about it.
That's it. I mean, let's talk about kind of CFO stuff here. For
Mhm.
background, you spent time at Forefront,
Yep.
then you were on Wall Street. It's not difficult to make money in the cannabis industry. It's very difficult to keep that money, aside from taxes taking it or, any other issues or expenses. So as a CFO, you aren't really working on the fun and sexy parts of the business. This is all the numbers and kind of the background things that make the business kind of continue to move forward. And, what are some of the roles as a CFO at a very large company like Copperstate Farms? Or if when you're at Forefront, like what are the biggest things that a CFO, they wake up and these are the things that they're thinking about. These are the tasks that they're looking at, because not many CFOs are hopping on calls and chatting about what is it really like in the middle of fire, pretty much at a large operator like yourself. What are you doing day to day here?
Yeah, no, I can't talk too much about Forefront just because I haven't been there in a while.
Yeah.
But those guys are some pretty serious operators, and they're phenomenal at that. And but there's similarities between all cannabis companies,
Yeah.
and I could talk more to Copper State.
Let's
Is
do it. Yeah.
um, there's so many challenges. There's so many challenges. If you look at the industry overall, going back 2 to 3 years, there was no infrastructure, right? So just having cultivation, it didn't exist. You had to go build it, and
Hmm.
there are not a lot of people that know how to actually build the infrastructure, and then how to grow the plant.
Hmm.
And then you have to build retail, and you have to do this in an environment where it's federally illegal. Um, Opening bank accounts is exceptionally difficult. There are no ERP systems, or there weren't. Some are coming on board now.
Hmm.
So everything is being done in Excel, and you're trying to do all this stuff at a when the investors are lending you money at very high interest rates.
Yeah.
And so it's one heck of a challenge to go build infrastructure, not raise it at uh, low rates, or raising equity was almost non-existent. So just the challenge of that alone is daunting. Some companies succeeded, some companies failed. They
Yeah.
borrowed too much money or are struggling right now and have tens, hundreds of millions of dollars at 15+% interest.
I think we know who that is.
Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
so, but there was no choice.
Yeah, that's all that
Right?
was out. That's all that was available.
That's all that was available, and then um, the banking side is a real pain in the butt.
Yeah, let's talk about
Um,
that. Let's peel into that. What do you think is going to happen with the banking side of things here? Who
I mean,
gets
my opinion, it's just another
yeah?
opinion.
Throw it out there. What
Um,
is it?
it's hard because we've got to figure out who's going to win the election, and that's its own beast.
Yeah.
I do think it's coming, and whether it's in 6 months or 36 months, that's the wide range that I'm using.
Hmm.
For us, it's less of a problem because we're in one state, and so
Yeah.
we have a deep relationships here. We know the banking partners that can help us, and it impacts us less. Um, But for multi-state operators that are in 5, 10, 15 states, it's a challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the bigger challenge, and this is something that Copperstate overcame, was figuring out how to grow at scale,
Yeah.
grow cannabis at scale. It's hard.
Yeah, scaling up
Um,
is very difficult. A
it's
1,000, 10,000
extremely
feet,
difficult.
it's fine, but
But
going to like you said, 1,000,000 feet,
a
that's a lot.
million, so, yeah, 1.7 million square feet, even 30,000 square feet is hard,
Yeah.
right? There's people that play classical music when they're growing. Like it's a unique plant that that is hard to grow.
Hmm.
Um, So I think that is one massive challenge to overcome that a lot of people have struggled with.
Hmm.
The second is systems. We've got some whizzes internally, and who are data guys, and
Yeah.
none of our systems talk to each other. Excel's our best friend. We don't have real time information on a lot of stuff, and so as a team, I say as a CFO, where we want to really do an analysis on our costs, it becomes a challenge. It's not like just pull a report from your ERP.
Yeah.
We have to do data dumps and then have all these wacky equations with Excel files that take 5 minutes to open, um, just to figure where we're at. We've gotten a lot better at it at Copper State. And I say we, I mean they did, because they did some legwork before I came.
Yeah.
But that's a huge push of mine. Once again, we're in one state, so we can figure it out. But for multi-state operators, and that have grown maybe through acquisition, where there's different processes, I don't think people realize how big a challenge it is to run a business of 500 to 2,000 people and hundreds of millions of revenues, and you don't have systems.
Yeah.
It's very stressful. Um,
Yeah, it
uh,
leaves you kind of operating blind to a certain extent. Like, you don't know if you're profitable, or each, like, for being a vertically integrated business, you essentially have 3 to 5 different businesses that,
yep,
hey, one may be profitable, one may not be profitable, one's offsetting the other, or
yep.
we don't even know our cost per pound by strain, by room, which, hey, any other kind of business would know, hey, when we make this kind of product in this facility, this is what it is to like the tenth of a penny. Whereas with cannabis, you can't really have those numbers because the systems are not there yet, or there's just so much moving parts to this. Teaching a cultivator how to calculate work in progress is difficult when that's like not their thing. And knowing that plants, like a third, or so to say, a 90-week old or 90-day old plant is not worth as much as a 30-day old plant in the size of just inventory, and flushing that down to cogs. Now this sounds like mumbo jumbo to most people, but this is like
But
the
you just hit a
basics.
bullseye for our for I'll talk about Copper State. We've done, and the team before I came did a phenomenal job getting it to 85%
Hmm.
understanding of our costs.
Hmm.
Maybe it's 90%, but we don't have an inventory management system, and so getting to we're using standard costing uh, for standard costing, and we have
Yeah.
these massive manufacturing variances that fluctuate on a monthly basis. And so um, it's a function of the regulatory environment in Phoenix, where we have this not-for-profit, and it becomes just a challenge from a reporting perspective. We spent probably 60 to 90 days building our own internal management report that we can use to figure out how we're doing from a profitability perspective. But it's also a factor of the systems.
Hmm.
Um, we don't have that granular level of detail yet.
Yeah.
Um, we're really good because of some of our BI folks internally
Yeah.
that are going into the data and crunching it and presenting it to us in very thoughtful ways where we understand what's going on. But we are looking right now pretty aggressively at a labor system and an ERP system that will allow us to get to that, peel back the onion a couple layers deeper.
Yeah.
So we could know exactly what you just said by strain. We're not there yet.
Gotcha. And so
But so what we do is we manage. We have different metrics, right? We're looking at our bank balances,
yeah.
right?
Is it
And how
going up or going down?
are they going up and are they going down? I mean, it's just there's some wonky stuff that you have to do.
Yeah.
We feel very good, obviously, on our POS data. It's just a challenge, and it
Yeah.
means that your team is going to be larger than it normally would be in a non-cannabis related business.
Yeah.
Payroll's a
There's some bloat. Yeah, there's going to be bloat for
There's
sure.
bloat for sure. There's so much manual work that you need to do that it just means that you need more people to help with the process.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So like creating custom data reports and things like that, I'm sure you may have some kind of dashboard you're looking at, or you've had these BI guys and gals run some cool reports for you to kind of
Yep.
unpack things. What are some insights that you've seen potentially in your business relative to other cannabis businesses you've looked at, or just things that maybe operators don't know they should be looking at, they should be watching the pulse? Aside from cost per pound, we know that we should look at that, any normalized statistics, grams produced per square foot or things like that. What are you guys looking at when you're producing at this large scale to make sure that, things don't go off the rails? 1.7 million square feet, a
Yep.
small problem can magnify quickly. What are you guys looking at to make sure that, the rails don't fall off?
Yeah, no, that's, there was a couple of good points in there. I won't talk to the production side and the cultivation side. Our team is phenomenal there, and I wouldn't do them justice. And phenomenal, especially in regards to what they had. 18 months ago, we brought in a new head cultivator, and there's two folks that run cultivation, and the work that they've done is nothing short of magical.
Yeah.
And as you think about the cultivation process, and you start in the mother room and go to veg and all the way to harvest, just understanding where pests come into the mix. That has been our learning over the past little while. And what we look at is a weekly drop list, which is what are we dropping on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
That's because we're in a less controlled environment. We could talk about Forefront. I mean, those guys are just phenomenal at what they do. But they're in a controlled environment. It's indoor, and so their yield or grams per square foot was an important metric.
Yeah.
Right? And then that waterfalls down into all the other byproducts. But we have KPIs for all the different departments. Output is one of the big ones at the farm. At retail, it's obviously patient count, basket size, wait time is extremely important for us. Keeping that low for our patients, discount percentage, and so we're trying to put all these different metrics together to come up with a group of data points that are relevant for each of the different groups. Marketing as well, finance as well, right? On the tax side, audit, making sure our systems are working properly. But we have like I said, our BI team has put together some really strong dashboards for us that we're getting on a weekly basis. So weekly sales, we have our inventory numbers, we have our drop numbers, we have some yield data. I'm just not as familiar with that yet. I'm still new, relatively new. So we're making it work. But we are heavily data driven, working with systems that are less than stellar.
That's good. Hey, that's what you got to be. Sometimes you just have to, make do with what you have. And like you said, there's not like, the sophisticated, Nexus systems out there for specifically this industry. So that's good that you guys are making it work. Let's kind of switch gears and talk about, hey, the beginning of getting into cannabis. What are some of the first things let me step back. What's one thing that you wish you would have known before starting your career in the cannabis industry? Because I'm sure you didn't spend your whole career here before jumping into cannabis. There's so many unknowns, things you thought were going to be problems, and then things that actually became problems that you thought were going to be easy. What are some of the things that you wish you knew about the industry before you got into the industry that would maybe make these pains a little less painful, things of that nature?
So I guess my regret is not that. I started looking at cannabis in 2014, 15. The chairman of Forefront's a good friend of mine. And I was looking at investing in his company at the time, personally and with some friends, and the same thing with Copperstate actually. And I didn't pull the trigger. That was a mistake on both of those investments, and I come from an investing background, so that is a regret of mine. But I've been in startups and chaotic environments my entire career, working on Wall Street and hedge fund world. I mean, you're dealing with the markets, something you can't control. And so I love that. I love the energy behind it. I thrive in that chaos. And so cannabis is
chaos.
It's rinse and repeat for me. And I like trying to solve problems. I don't need structure. I like big challenges, and so for me, there are no regrets. I know it. I know they were. I guess they were unknown. They were unknowns at the time.
Yeah,
Before I actually started to become, actually working in the industry versus investing. But now they're known knowns, and I like them.
that's
I
good.
have no regrets. It's the thrill for me of taking an industry that has so many benefits. It's not just the dollars that are produced, but you could see it talking to patients, talking to friends that have illnesses, whether it's cancer and the chemotherapy drugs are destroying them, and they go to edibles, and I mean,
Their whole life
just that part is
changes.
fascinating. It's life changing, and like the fact that we haven't been able to do the research on the medicinal side for 40 years is a complete shame. The amount of people that have been incarcerated and had their lives ruined, their family, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's upsetting, and Copperstate is involved in the Last Prisoner project to try and
That's
do their
great.
part. But those are things I stand behind,
Hmm.
and I'm proud to be a part of. But the chaos and all those things, I have no regrets.
That's good.
Maybe a regret is I didn't understand um, the amount of people that were getting jailed for having inconsequential amounts of cannabis, and
Hmm.
the lives that were ruined, and not doing my part to understand that. Maybe that's a regret, something I should have been more aware of. I wasn't in the circle where knowledge was made available to me.
Yeah, it makes
Uh,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, those things. Yeah, you look at the social issues but driven by this plant that's now exploding into popularity. And yeah, it's crazy to see that. Yeah, some people are still sitting in the cell because 6 years ago it was illegal, but now you can go
That's
out
not.
to and get it, and pick it.
Yep.
So yeah.
And so that's a hard one to get my head around.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah.
Gotcha. So looking at the cannabis industry, it's highly regulated. It's not for everybody. It's kind of chew them up, spit them out kind of industry, especially when you see this term, the green rush, right? Everyone thinks you can make a bunch of money, just hop in 18 months, you're going to be sitting on an island with Mark Zuckerberg, sipping pina colada kind of thing. This is not the way that industry works. This is a long-term type of thing if you want to stay successful in this industry. But what are the kind of people you're looking for when you're trying to hire in for, let's talk about, directors and above, what are the personality traits that make a great director or even a cannabis entrepreneur? I'm sure you've met with a lot of cannabis entrepreneurs, successful ones, unsuccessful ones. What are the kind of the
Mhm.
personality traits you're looking for? Like, hey, this guy or gal's got it. They're going to make it. Or, hey, conversely, this person is totally going to, crap out and they're not going to make it past 6 months. What are your thoughts on the personality traits that make a successful or unsuccessful person in the industry?
Um, yeah, I think people, if you talk about director and above, I think it's going to getting their hands dirty. Something they may not have had to do beforehand because of the lack of systems.
That's great.
Where
Yeah.
you've just got is a huge eye opener.
Hmm.
Like, what do you mean we can't run a report on uh, you know copper state product versus third party product and margins? Like, we actually have to
Yeah.
go in and do that work.
Yeah.
And so everything's just a little bit harder,
Yeah.
and you got to get your hands a little dirtier. And it's not just like, hey, we're going to be sitting on an island sipping pina coladas in 18 months. I mean, it's really hard stuff. And for the people that have been in this industry for 5-6 years, like I say, we're standing on the shoulders of giants,
Yeah.
because the amount of stuff that they had to go through, not being able to raise capital and literally having no systems and no, I mean, that's pretty remarkable stuff. We're moving away
Yeah.
from that, excuse me. But you've got to be able to get your hands dirty. It's
Okay.
hard work.
Yeah.
Um, um, so that's one part. And I mean, I think the hustler, the person that figures out how to, get stuff done,
Hmm.
um, is the perfect personality for it. If you're looking for rules and processes and you're just being really strict in the way you do things because you came from other big industry, I think that's going to give you some problems. But if you're a hustler and you figure out how to get stuff done, you should be able to thrive in this industry.
That's great. That's a
Uh,
great way to look at it. Yeah. It's a shock coming from certain industries. I came from QSR and, working at Panda Restaurant Group, and you run a report and in real time, you can tell how much, chicken's being sold, where in this dispensary, yeah, you're saying at least 1 week lagging data. And that's tough. especially when you have that data at your hands to make nimble decisions in other industries. So that's
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to make a decision with 65% information.
mhm.
And I'm of the view that once you get to 65 to 75, you have enough information to make a decision.
Yeah.
But some people may be used to, significantly more info.
Hmm.
Um, and, um, and so if that's what you're used to, it's a challenge. And you've got to be nimble. You've got to be able to be flexible,
Hmm.
and get your hands dirty. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Let's look at let's see here. What are some interesting things happening in the industry aside from stuff at Copper State, aside from legalization, any of the other kind of like main headlines? What are some things you're seeing that is really piquing your curiosity or making you more excited about the future of the industry? It could be product based, it could be regulatory based, I guess. What are you seeing that keeps you excited aside from the Copper State farm stuff? Just the thriving of the industry. What are you seeing in the news or in chats with your peers about the industry that keeps you excited about the industry right now?
Gosh. Um, that's a big question,
Yeah,
because I still think we're in the second inning. Like it hasn't even started.
I've heard that
Um,
twice already in this week. That second inning thing. Yeah,
yeah, I
that
mean,
makes
like
sense.
so, like it's still federally illegal. There's no banking. There's no investment dollars. Like we haven't seen someone raise 500 million of equity. A lot of these companies are strapped. They're running these businesses really tight because they don't have access to capital, and so um, doing R&D projects to truly understand the plant, to find out the health benefits that may
Hmm.
or may not exist. I personally believe they do. But we haven't even done that yet. It hasn't
Yeah.
started. So that's one on the positive side. Um, from a systems perspective, we use a POS called Trees. It's been phenomenal for us, but the ability to get better systems and have companies raise money to invest more in those systems and have more companies come on and further refine them so that we can get the analytics. Um, that's exciting for me. Remember, I have a Wall Street hat still, so an
Hmm.
investing hat. I think that's a tremendous opportunity. Um, um, New product development.
Hmm.
Right now, I think it's just very heavy THC focused,
Yeah, it is.
um, and so there's maybe we'll go to the medicinal side, but um, as I told you, I had appendicitis last week, and we had to cancel our meeting.
Yeah.
Um, but the first thing that they offered me was morphine,
Oh,
and I said no, I don't want morphine. It's not what I'm. It's just too serious a drug. I don't need it. I ended up taking it because the pain was so excruciating.
yeah.
Um, and back to the person that I mentioned that had cancer that was using edibles is, there's other forms and formats, and whether it's CBN or CB, something that we don't know,
Hmm.
that could be really powerful in certain situations where I'm not getting buzz, but I'm getting the pain relief, or I'm having a reduction in anxiety. Um, we're just so early days in that. I find it fascinating.
That's
Um,
great.
you know, and so that's on the science and research side. I think we haven't even we're in the top of the first.
Yeah.
On the operations side, maybe we're in the fourth, right? I'm averaging it out to we're in the second industry inning for the industry. I mean, I
There's a
just
lot of
think
upside. Yeah, we're super,
there's just so
super.
many areas. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
great question, um, but there's just so many areas.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to know that the industry is not mature and that hey, anybody could still come out on top, and anybody still could float from the top to the bottom. We've seen some case studies over the past 18 months of people that are totally bleeding. Everybody wanted to be this group, and now they got $10 million in cash left, and they're gonna have to go raise money. This is a big problem in the industry. You
Yeah,
know.
no, I think what we see is the publicly traded multi-state operators. Some of them have less than stellar balance sheets, but what's fascinating is there's a lot of private companies, like ourselves included, that are generating significant amounts of cash, um, and are debt free. And so you're going to have a whole second wave of companies um, that are that could come to market, but that are because they were more fiscally disciplined or lucky. Luck, I think, is a big factor. could come in and start to take a lot of share in the market in specific markets.
Yeah.
So that's one change that I think people are going to see more of. Copperstate is one of those examples,
Hmm.
or at least I believe it, but I see it as well in the numbers. And then low cost manufacturing hasn't existed yet, and so as prevalent, the people that are the low cost providers, I think, ultimately will win in this industry.
Hmm.
And when you are the low cost provider, you can actually focus on brands. Um, when your inputs your input costs are so high, people are spending a lot of money on marketing dollars, but they have no ability to have margin,
Yeah.
and they're not self-sustaining businesses. And I think this brand concept makes sense.
Hmm.
But I think costs have to come down significantly where companies can really invest in brands, and have a cost base that will support a business behind it, and
Yeah.
not just pretty packaging and a great little story. Um,
100%.
and I think that's going to start to present itself over the next few years, especially as pricing comes down for the product.
Hmm.
The people that can't scale down that cost curve are going to have a lot of trouble, and those that can will have outsized opportunities. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. So let's talk about raising capital a little bit. There's the basics when you raise capital. Who's the team? What's the financial outlook? What's the problem, the solution? One of the things that, cannabis is not necessarily novel. Opening up a dispensary is not novel anymore. Cultivation side of things. You have to have something special or a moat or something that differentiates you from your competitors. What's the differentiator between that you and your team have leaned on to either raise capital, or what should other people look at when they are going to raise capital? What should they try to look at as potentially some of their different differentiators? Because I'm sure you've seen a lot of pitch decks. You've probably seen a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
You're not just trying to work at one place at one time. It was probably a shop around kind of thing. You've seen a lot of things at forefront. What are these differentiators that are really helping people raise money in this pretty bleak environment right now?
Raising money is a huge challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a different skill set raising money in cannabis, and it's a different group of investors. It looks like the floodgates have opened a little bit in the past few weeks. We've seen you know, hundreds of millions of dollars now getting raised in equity, which was non-existent for 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's equity with warrants attached. I mean, we still can't get straight equity.
Yeah.
Um, I think the key um, right now is obviously that you as a company you want to tell a story, but you got to tell a story that has cash flow associated with it,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, free cash flow associated with it. And so once you can get to that point, and then there's a growth story of some sort, whether you're multi-state operators, we have 97, new markets we can grow into, or Copperstate, which is different. We've got tremendous growth opportunities within one state right
Yeah.
now. It's that focus on cash flow operations that I think is pushing people in the right direction. Um, we're seeing rates come down on financing.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing the ability to borrow money still at high rates, but now there's no warrants attached to it. Um, and so companies that can actually execute, operate, and show cash flow and a path to either free cash flow if they're not already there, I think is what's opening people's eyes to the industry. Like, wait a second, it's not 2 years ago where we were funding build outs and operating losses. Is now these guys are profitable, or these companies are, and we're funding growth opportunities. And companies that can tell that story are having easier times raising capital.
Yeah, it's hard to invest in an idea now at this point. Sophisticated investors or any kind of investors, they have a lot coming across their table. Why take a bet on 2 or 3 or 7 people that just have ideas when there's, hey, this person out here just needs some diesel to the fire, and they can take over and do some real damage and take some real market share. So that's good thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think investors are catching on who are the good operators and not. You can see it in the numbers.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, if you have retail margins in the mid to low 40s, there's something you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Either you don't have cultivation capacity, or you don't have a good handle on what's going on. And then as you start to move up the margin profile, you could see who's doing well.
Hmm.
And as you dig deeper, you figure out why they're doing well. There's usually reasons for it, whether it's because of a certain geography or whatever it may be.
Gotcha.
I think investors are catching on to that as well.
That makes sense. So we're kind of winding down here. Let's do the last few things. What does the future hold for Copper State Farms aside from what we've already talked about? Is there any big MBOs or projects you guys are working on to move the needle, or anything like that? If you can share, if not, I totally get that. But
Yeah,
what's
no,
the future?
I could share, high level for sure. I mean, we are aggressively looking at growing our retail presence in Arizona.
Hmm.
And we have, like I said, we closed on 2 licenses yesterday. Um, and we have visibility to quite a few more. We want to do it in a fiscally responsible manner.
Yeah.
And we want to be the largest player in Arizona. It's a massive market. Our low cost positioning allows us to thrive in that environment.
Mm.
And that's from a business perspective. From an employee perspective, we want it to be the best place to work.
Hmm.
Um, we want our employees to feel fulfilled, and it's really, culture is extremely important to us.
Hmm.
I can't. It's like the thing to say.
Yeah.
But if you met Pankaj, our CEO, and met our team, I mean, we try to live that. It's really, really important. So being best place to work in Arizona, and then getting more products into the marketplace. From an actual product perspective, we obviously have flour now. We have cartridges. We have edibles and brownies and candies.
Hmm.
And we have our new set of products from our hydrocarbon lab that's going to be up and running very shortly. And so having that house of brands in the Phoenix marketplace
Hmm.
is very important for us.
Nice. Good deal. Is there any last things that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share or cover in this interview here?
No, I think we that was a nice broad interview. I appreciated it very much, and appreciate you being patient while I canceled last week. But I'm really glad that we got to connect.
Likewise.
And obviously, I'm thrilled to be at Copperstate. I think the opportunity in front of us is pretty significant. And we've got the team to execute to it, and
Hmm.
I'm really happy to be part of the team.
Good deal. Good deal. So where can we find your brands online or your business online? What's the website? Is there any other places we can find the brand?
Copperstate Farms is is the company name. That's the name of the farm. Our retail brand is Soul Flower. We're on Instagram. I don't know the handle, but if you
We'll put that up
Google
here
Soul
somewhere.
SOL Flower, and so same thing on LinkedIn. That's where you can find us in the social channels and web.
Good deal. Well, Brad, thank you again so much for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I
Same
wish
here.
you and the team much success on growing Copper State Farms for all the mission and the goals that you guys want to hit. And again, thank you for your time.
I appreciate it very much as well. Have a great rest of your week.